Okay, so let us try to understand this with a small network, how this access control will work. We'll try to do that. See, now here we have a small network. So in this network, you can see we have PC1, PC2, PC3. So you can see the configuration of this. What is the IP address assigned to PC1?
It's 192.168.
Yeah, 192.168.20.4. Similarly, what is the IP address for your PC0? It's 20.3, right? And for PC2, okay. So the network address is different from your PC0. PC0 and PC1 are having 192.168.20, whereas your PC2 is having the 192.168.10. So they are in different. And now see what is the IP address of your web server. So your web server is at 192.168.100.100, and whereas your file server is at the network level, your 192.168.200, right? Different network. Now similarly, for your switches, what is the configuration is given. That means at this router you can find out what are the interfaces are there. How many interfaces are there for the router here? Router R1. How many interfaces are there? 4 interfaces are there. Okay. So 4 interfaces. So they are configured with your first interface is your F. The fast Ethernet is 0 by 0. Okay. Another one is the interface your F01 fast Ethernet interface 01, which is at your 192.168.20.1. That means your this interface is connected with the network 192.168. Your 10 fast Ethernet 00. 01 is connecting to the PC0 and PC1, and your what you call the 192.168.100 dot 1, it is connected to your the web server, and another one is connected to your file server. Okay, so if you observe the IP addresses there, you're finding the IP address of this router's gateway for a different part. It is showing that the interface of your IP address is showing this. You are having 100.1, 200.1, 10.1, 20.1. What it means? If a IP address starts with 192.168.10.0 means it is a network address. If 192.168.100.10.1 means it is default gateway IP address. In this network, this R1 router is a default gateway for all other devices. And we use the 168.168.10.255 means that is broadcasting IP address. Other than these 3 IP addresses, the remaining IP addresses are assigned to the end devices. Now, let us try to see in this scenario that the network administrator has asked to create, suppose, a standard named access control list to prevent the access to a file server as well as the web server Then the file server contains the data that is based for the web applications. So only the web manager workstation here, the PC1 we say, and the web server needs to access the file server. All other traffics, only the web server and web manager, they needs to access this file server. All other users are not allowed to access this file server. So then how to configure this one first? So first we need to check it out to configure at the router part. As a network administrator, we have to be at the, we have to configure the access control list at the router. So how do we? So first let us try to check it out whether PC1 is able to reach to your server or not. So what is the server IP address, as we said? So what's the command generally used for pinging? We use the ping command and the destination IP address. Destination IP address, we are trying to check whether our manager, web manager, is trying to reach the web server or not. So the IP address is 192.168.100, okay, dot the 100, which is given to it's the IP address. So check it out whether it is reachable or not. So if it is reachable, then you are able to find the reply from your server. So similarly, you can check from the web server, check for your file server whether file server is reachable or not. So do that, ping 192.168. Your it is given that 100. 200.100, right? It is another network, 200.100. Then check it out whether it is also reachable or not. Okay. Yeah. So it is also the reachable. Now try to check from the web server whether web server is able to receive or not. This is what exactly from any of desktop we do. We go to the C command prompt line, and from there we try to ping any device in the network. So we'll try to ping to the file server that 192.168. It is on network 200 and its number is 100. So it is reachable. Okay, that means it shows that every device here, the green signals, the green arrow shows that every device is reachable to every other device. So the connections which are established or installed is successfully installed, and they are able to reach one another network, one another device in the network. Now, the concept what we are doing, only the web manager and the web server are allowed to access your file server. All other devices in the network are not allowed to access this file server. So for that, the access control list plays an important role. So that limits the traffic only from your PC1 and web server to your file server. All other traffics will be denied. So to do that, we need to configure this router. So in the router configuration, so we need to go and configure this router first. So to configure this, we need to enable the router through the console port. The console port, the laptop or any desktop which is connected to your router using console port. Then you are able to go through your command prompt line. From there you can access the router. So there you can configure by using the command, your enable command. Then you are able to enter into the router now, router operating system. So inside the router operating system, you are going to configure, you are going to change something in the configuration file. So you are going to configure it. So what you are going to configure, you are going to configure either the terminals or memory or the network terminals on this the router. So when you are going, what you are going to configure, we are going to implement as a network administrator, we are going to implement the access control list. So for access control list, as said, we are going to configure the IP addresses. Okay. For this IP addresses, we are going to give the permission for the access list. So whether you are going to configure the standard access list or extended access list, that we need to mention. So let us assume this is a simple network. Let us go with the standard access list, and we are going to access the file server. Okay. So for that, we are giving the restriction that your file server is able to access, right? Giving configuring for the file underscore your server, okay, and providing the restrictions for this. And then try to enter that. Oh, what's wrong in there? The file. Oh. I forget my glasses. I was okay, I'm just missing something. Yeah. So by giving us the file restrictions, that is file underscore server underscore your restrictions. Now, as a network administrator, we are going to permit. If you see here, the router is configured with the standard IP address with the access control list. So in that access control list, we are going to permit the host, give the name of the host. What is the IP address of the host? For this web manager, the IP address is given that 192.168.20. That is on network 20, right? Your PC2 is on network 10. PC0 and PC1 is on network 20, and the name for this the IP host address is given your 4. So we are going to permit this host to access the file server, and similarly permit the host of your web server. Okay, so web server is on the network 192.168. Your 100 dot, and the host address is 100. Correct? So once you configure, you are giving the access control list for this, and then you need to only these two systems are allowed to access the file server, and all other end devices in the network, they are not allowed. So give the command that deny any command. If any others are trying to access, they will be denied, and then you can configure it. So once it is configured, then you try to exit from it, router, and exit from the configuration mode. Then you will be at the router now. So now you check it out as an administrator. Show the your access list. Okay. So what are you finding there now in the access list? When you are giving this command, you are finding the access list. So in the access list, it is showing you that the standard IP access list for your file server restriction is the number 10. So this is ACL number. As we just said, the ACL standard numbers used from 1 to 99 for IP standard ACL, and from 100 to your 199 for extended IP standard, and from your 110 to your 1199 they are used, those numbers, ACL numbers, used for your 48-bit MAC addresses, right? Different MAC addresses. So here you are seeing that here grouping that 10, that is randomly assigned. The 10 is permitting this host. 20 is permitting this host. That means what? The network host address, the last byte. Okay. So the 10 and 20, these ACL allows only these two users to access your file server. All other users are not allowed to access this file server, right? So now you try to apply the named access group for this is for your inbound. Now apply the named ACL outbound for your fast Ethernet interfaces of your configuration. So how it is going to be configured? So to configure this for outbound ACL, it is configured by just going through your configure mode. So in that configure mode, we are going for configuring the interface, your fast Ethernet. Or we are going to configure this interface, so you will be the interface, your fast Ethernet. So what are the interfaces are there here? Okay, we'll go with the fast interface. your fast Ethernet, that is your which one it is, 0 by 1, which is not used. So 0 by 1 interface which is used for this outgoing interface for this, right? So this configuration, now you are going to configuring this interface to access this file server, because your PC1, that is web manager, is connected to the interface of your router with your fast Ethernet 0 by 1, right? This line, this interface is fast Ethernet 0 by 0. This one is your 0 by 1, and these are your other interfaces. So for PC1, we are going to configuring that it is going to access the file server. So how you are going to configuring it for outbound of your the access group for file server? So that the IP access group for what? They are going for the file server restriction, your file server restrictions for your outbound or for your outbound at this router. When you configure this, the file server restriction is configured successfully, then you can come out of it, exit. That will be saved automatically. So then you try to verify whether all these lists are there or not by just giving your showcase, the show access list. You will find only the access list are there. Now we try to access from this. We just configure this. Okay. Now first, let me try to ping from the manager to your file server. So what is the file server? Ping try to your 200, whether it is reached or not, it is reaching now. Correct? Now at the same time, try to ping from PC1. Ping 192.168.200 network, and the host name is number is 100. So this is also restricted. I mean the configured. So if the configuration here is not done properly, then every interface will be go on there. If it is done properly here, then when we close it, it will check it out whether any other devices which are allowed or not by just trying to configure whether they are reachable or not. So let me just try to access the FTP with the FTP packet, that the FTP or FTP of your IP address, suppose 192.168.200.100, whether it is reachable or not from your PC2. Because your file server is reachable, but whether it is giving any service to it or not. So here you can see now for this IP address, when your PC0 is trying to connect, it is asking you the username and the password. So if you are allowed to access the FTP server, you will get the username and password. So if you don't have the username and password, we cannot access to that. Okay. This is what we have seen in the previous lecture also. When it is the trying to access, then it is configured at the router level to give only the authorized users can access that server, FTP server. So this is the some what about the access control list.